Yeah.
So now we got the new book, The City and Its Uncertain Worlds, which is today's subject. First of all, welcome to Convo on the Shore, everyone. Today with another beautiful guest by my side. It's Sean from, am I spelling it correct? Valico Ventures?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So Sean is a YouTuber and a very chill guy talking about books, and I can urge everyone to watch his videos. It's always a joy to watch your stuff. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I know we've been trying to make this happen for like a year, so I'm finally here.
So finally we made it on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I guess it's Black Friday for us now, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Black Friday is only a shopping day here over in Germany, so that they don't have such things.
Yeah. Same thing for us. Yeah, it's just, Thanksgiving, everyone gets together, and then the day after. At this point, I think most people are just on Amazon on their phone and buying things. But
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you buy anything yet today, or
no? I'm not going to.
Okay.
I know a lot of people get their Christmas shopping done for Black Friday, but I honestly, for the past several years, I just bake people things. In my Christmas break for like 3 days, I just bake nonstop, and then I give people.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's homemade. People like it, but but I do have the day off today, so that's why I can make this happen, especially with the time difference. If people don't know, I'm coming from Arizona, so there's, I think, more than an 8-hour difference between the two of us.
That's 8 hours. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I know the issue with Leo, with my co-host, who is in Lexington, Kentucky. So it's always a little bit tricky to find the matching time zone. So what we normally do is on a Friday, because Friday I quit a little bit earlier from work. And, as soon as he wakes up, he calls me, and that's how we do it currently. So, yeah, cool. I really love your videos, because the one I saw first was it a ranking? I'm not sure. The one that it has a lot of views. Was it a ranking?
Yeah, I think I just ranked all of his books that were out at the time. So yeah.
And it was like, I thought, quick editing, quite cool images and so on. Yeah, and
thank you. I've thought about doing a new one now that the new book is out. Partially because I know people will watch it because they watched the other one, but I've reread some of them since then, and probably the order has shifted around a little bit.
Yeah.
And I really like your videos because you, I think, approach it like way more cinematically than I do. Like, the fact that you call a lot of what you do is like a documentary, and so
sort of.
It's like, I really like it because it's got this kind of like slow burn, like, there's like a mood to it, and I really like that.
Thank you.
I'm in the middle of reading The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and his fan base is like super active, and so that's been kind of a boon for me, where I can pretty much anything I upload about that book, people will gravitate towards. But like, I put up a meme about it the other day that's literally just a clip from Rick and Morty that I slapped a title on, and it has like 40,000 views. So it's funny what takes off.
It's just you can calculate it. You can only maybe it's like you can estimate it, but in the end it can turn out totally different.
Yeah, it is what it is. So remind me, I know you got into Murakami when Killing Commendatore came out. Is that right?
Yes, kinda. It was. I was always, and maybe you can use it as a bridge for the episode today. So this is what I had in mind. Let's just talk about how we got into Murakami first.
For sure, yeah.
And so thanks for asking. So I was always a bookish guy, but the stuff I read was always about science fiction. Star Wars, Frank Herbert's Dune, and so on, and also books about movies. I read books by Quentin Tarantino. He has written some novels based on his movies and so on, or The Godfather and stuff. And then I just read nothing for 3 or 4 years, only like graphic novels or comics. And then I turned 30 and I got a gift card from the local bookstore. And it was like, okay, your life has changed a bit. You lost some friends. You made some new. You got a new job right now, which because my last job really stressed me out, and I got a much calmer job right now. And I said, okay, now try to read something different. Don't stick to the movie stuff. Don't stick to science fiction. Just try something else. And it was in April or May 2018. And they displayed Killing Commendatore quite aggressively in the store I went in. So, yeah, and I just went through the first four or five pages, and I was like, okay, that's a guy in his mid-30s, and he's quitting his current life. That's something you can quite understand. So, so I bought the book, and it was in the first evening I kept reading until two after midnight, and and I was immediately hooked, and that's how I got into Murakami. So
nice. Yeah, I similarly was at kind of a interesting point in my life where I was in the middle of college. I think I was like 21 or 22. And I had some kind of mental health issues for a little while, and I was just looking for something to kind of like an activity to do that would sort of, be healthy for my brain, basically. And I had a friend at the time who was a big reader, and I used to read a ton when I was a kid, but you get busy in like high school and college, and I kind of fallen out of it. But he gave me a copy of Wind Up Bird Chronicle, and I remember sitting down and reading it and having like no expectations. He just said like, here, and it was just kind of unlike anything I had ever read. The plot was kind of like a noir. It's kind of a mystery, but it also goes in so many different directions, and it's not super linear, it kind of, he'll go explore this for a while and explore that, and then all of a sudden you're in a flashback to, the war. And I just remember getting done with that and being like, I need more of this. Like I immediately wanted to jump into the rest of his work. And it also just kind of like re-interested me in reading as a hobby. So yeah, in kind of like the next year or two after that, I slowly at first read like a few more of his novels, and then I think by the time Killing Commendatore came out, I had read all of them. I think specifically in like 2017, I just made it a point to get through all of them before the new one came out. And yeah, I mean, it's even since then, my taste has changed too. But he's definitely the author that I know the best, and I've read nearly everything he's done. I think we're both on the same page that neither of us have read Absolutely on Music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's back here somewhere on my shelf, but I just have never gotten to it. I still haven't read Novelist as a Vocation either, like the kind of one about him being a writer. But yeah, there's just something about it, and as you can tell from being someone who's into him, like his fan base is kind of cultish,
quite,
yeah, and I think that's just from the nature of like his writing style and what he talks about. I don't know if you've had this happen to you, but I've recommended his books to people in my life, and like the reception is so hit or miss. Like sometimes people are like, what is this? Like it's boring or weird. And so it's kind of cool having like an online community of people who are also into it.
Yeah, same. I was quite surprised how huge the community is. In fact, I knew that he's a well-known author and everyone loves him, but that the community itself is so huge, and people like they just make contact with you and send you messages out of nothing. It's a beautiful thing, because when you're walking around, of course you can't ask people, hey, do you read Murakami? Let's talk about it. It's not like people who are reading true crime or Scandinavian crime, which is a very common thing in Germany. But, yeah, so it's good to have this online community, definitely.
Yeah.
And there's something I would like to, before we dive into the book, because you reviewed The City and Its Uncertain Walls, and I really liked your review. And in the end, you addressed something really, really good. And I was like, yeah, finally someone is saying it. This whole Nobel Prize issue.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the matter? I don't get it.
Yeah, I just like, it's I think kind of the point I get to is like the quality of his novels is not going to change if he gets it or he doesn't get it. And like what else does he have to prove? He's sold millions and millions of books. He's probably rich. He's kind of a recluse, so I don't really know what he does, but I just like it seems like some of the fan base has this sense of like there needs to be justice for Haruki Murakami. Like I love him, so everyone else should love him. And it's like, he's had an impact, and you've seen other people who are like contemporaries of his win the award, right? Like I think a lot of people point to is it Kazuo Ishiguro? Wrote it. I know he wrote Clara and the Sun, and I can't remember his other books, but he's kind of a contemporary of his. He's also Japanese, and so they're like, well, if he can win it, why can't Murakami win it? And it's like, just get over it.
It doesn't prove anything. If you like the book, you still love it. The book itself is not changing if it's winning a prize or not. Same for movies. I mean, like we've been cheering for Leo DiCaprio for so many years to win the Oscar, but in the end, every movie is great, so it's fine.
For sure. And I think if you look at it even closer to like the people awarding the Nobel Prize or the Oscars or whatever else, it's just a body of people and a small body of people. And so they don't necessarily represent the readership as a whole. And so really you're just sort of hinging your sort of appreciation for this person on a random group of people who aren't thinking about you at all. And the other thing too is like, I think what the Nobel Prize can do as a positive is give authors who are maybe critically well reviewed but not known to a mass audience a platform. So like, for instance, Hong Kong, who's a Korean author, won it this year, and I love her books, and for her to like have an even bigger platform now, I think is amazing, especially because she's young. Like I'm pretty sure she's like in her 30s or 40s, and so she's got a long career ahead of her, and now hopefully whatever she writes next, even more people can read.
That's the good thing about such awards. But he is already at his prime or peak, or maybe he passed it already. So I don't think that it's necessary to award him. Of course, it would be something good, but not necessary. That's the thing.
Yeah, and he's won other awards. He literally has a whole library named after him.
Yeah.
So like, what more do you want?
Exactly. So we got the new book, The City and Its Uncertain Walls, and it is the first novel, not the first book, but the first novel since Killing Commendatory. And in between, we had First Person Singular, which was a short story collection. Mm-hmm. How did you like that? Did you read it? I guess you did.
Yeah, I think I read Killing Commendatory, and then First Person Singular I think came out like a couple years, maybe a few years after that. It's definitely my least favorite out of his short story collections. It was fine, like it wasn't terrible or anything, but I think the kind of like meta aspect that he was taking with the book like just didn't really land for me entirely. So I don't know, I kind of got done reading that one and I was like, oh boy, does he still have it, but with that said, I was proven wrong because I really liked the new book a lot.
Yeah, me too. So people were a little bit worried, as you said, because it was announced from the very beginning that this is based on a short story he has released in the 80s, which was again a sample for Hardboiled Wonderland at the End of the World. And people were like, okay, do we really need this? What are we expecting now? And the short story collection was received, as I would say, quite middly. It was not praised as the other short story collections. And people were like, okay, does he still have it? And turns out he still has it. It was a great book. I enjoyed it. Of course, it has all the typical ingredients, but at the same end, it felt like coming home.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, It wasn't what I expected at all, because when it was announced that it's in the same world as Hardboiled Wonderland, that book is one of his early ones, and I think with his earlier work, he had a little bit more, because he's very influenced by like Raymond Chandler, I think, and like The Big Sleep and those kind of noir stories. And like Wild Sheep Chase is a lot like that, and Hardboiled Wonderland has a little bit of that too. And this new book, even though it shares the same world, right? You know, like the town with the wall around it and the unicorns or the beasts, as he calls them, it's a completely different mood. Like this one is, I think, much more in line with his kind of more romantic books, like Sputnik Sweetheart or Norwegian Wood. So right off the bat, I was like, oh, so that's what this is. And once I settled into it, I really liked it. I think that, like you said, it's a lot of very familiar ingredients. I think he's kind of pulling from a lot of different books he's written. Not to spoil it per se, but there's definitely some similarities to Kafka on the Shore, I think, especially later in the book. But yeah, overall, I was not even surprised, because I did have some faith in him to put out another good one. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And if this ends up being his last book, then I think it's a good note to go out on. I don't think that'll be the case. I feel like he's got more in him, especially because he's getting older, but you know, he runs all the time, and I'd like to hope he lives to 150. So we'll see. But yeah, what were your impressions of it?
Yeah, quite the same. I think it's not as unhinged in the creativity like the other books, but still it's very melancholic. Reminded me a lot of, you know, like a little bit of Norwegian Wood with Kafka, you know, some sort of mix with the Hardboiled Wonderland stuff. But that's something I noticed, is that he's talking a lot about death this time. And that's maybe he has aged. I'm not sure. Death was always a common theme in his other books, but this time I think he put the bar a little bit higher for that. So yeah, in the end, I read it within 3 days because I really loved it. It got me hooked from the first page.
Yeah,
because from the very beginning, he also showed that he can still play with his narration style as he did in the past. And this time we have, you know, is it the you perspective in English? You call it like that, or is it the third person? No, the second person singular, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd have to open it up and see, but you know, I think
because he's talking to the girl at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's true. It kind of switches between that and like first person perspective. And yeah, his books definitely, like, that definitely gives his books a different feel. Like I know like 1Q84, right? That's all third person perspective. And since you've got like the two and then three main characters near the end, I think that works really well. But yeah, this one, I think using that perspective also made it feel like more personal, you know, like it felt a little bit more intimate.
Yeah, definitely. It felt very intimate. Yeah. Because he gives a lot of insight on the character himself, I think, you know, about all his thoughts. And it's not about that the story is driving forward a lot. It's a lot about his environment and how he thinks about it. You know, all the different shapes and so on, what he's thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, my favorite book is probably 1Q84, just because of the scope of it. I really like all the kind of weird, like you said, like kind of unhinged creativity that happens throughout that one. So part of me wanted another one of those, especially it being related to Hardboiled Wonderland. I thought, are we going to learn more about like the underground under the city and like I forget exactly what they are, but the little creatures that are living down there.
The Inklings.
Yeah, the Inklings, and then, you know, in the town with the walls, like, are we going to learn more about like where the unicorns come from or whatever else? And I think the first half of the book, you get a little bit of that, right? Like you definitely learn a little bit more about the town. But really it does kind of settle into this kind of intimate, like kind of portrayal of the inside of this guy's head, not only the world, but like his feelings and about lost love. And yeah, I really liked it. I definitely think it's partially a product of his age and talking about dying and all of that. Yeah, I would put it, I wouldn't say it's one of his like top 5 books.
No.
Yeah, and maybe it'll change if I read it again, and I'm sure I will. But it's definitely middle of the pack, or maybe leading a little bit higher than that for me. If I was going to reread one of his books, this would be near the top.
Yeah, same for me. I wouldn't put it in the top 5. That's difficult anyway, but I wouldn't put it in the top 5. But still, it is among the better works, I would say.
Yeah, I think so, especially for this, kind of phase of his career. I think, at least for me, I think there's kind of like 3 eras of his work. Like, I think you've got from the very beginning until probably like Wind Up Bird Chronicle, where you've got him writing a bunch of different types of things, and then he hits that one. And I understand that Norwegian Wood was the one that kind of propelled him into stardom and kind of international acclaim. But Wind Up Bird Chronicle, to me, I think at the time was like his longest book and probably his most ambitious. And, it changes on depending on who you ask. But I think for a lot of people, they kind of consider that maybe his best or close to his best. And then you kind of have the period from that until 1Q84, which is him going even bolder. It's even longer. It's by far his longest book. And then that gets, I think, kind of a mixed reception. At least that's the vibe that I've ascertained from looking on the internet. And everything past that sort of feels like I would call it like modern day Haruki Murakami, where it's not such a big deal every time he puts out a new book. Like, certainly people are excited for it, but this kind of feels like the victory lap, if that makes sense. Like, he's already won, so he can kind of do whatever he wants.
That's my thoughts as well. He has, I always considered Norwegian Wood as this point where he was just aware of himself, what he likes to write, because Norwegian Wood, when it came out, there was a total hype, and he flew to Italy, and there he just wrote off all his frustration into Dance, Dance, Dance. And after that, the books that came after were all masterpieces, in my opinion, because after that you had the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, you had Kafka on the Shore, you had After Dark, Sputnik Sweetheart. That was, this mid era that you called, and then you had, stuff like Tsukure Tazaki and all these later works, which were a little bit more like, it felt like more like a routine he was writing. And now we got this, which is still a very good book. And as we said, it is a really good book, but it's not in the top 5.
Yeah. I think it's perfectly commendable. I think he did a great job. And I think part of it too, maybe you can speak to this as well, but I'm in my 30s now, and the sort of feeling of discovering him for the first time is special, right? And so I think no matter what, your first Murakami book is the one that you kind of end up gravitating towards. And so after you've read all of it, it's kind of hard for him to like surprise you again. You know what I mean? But at the same time, right, like you got into it with Killing Commendatore, which I think is really good, but that wouldn't make my top 5 either. And then there's a kid that works at the bookstore down the street from me that was also his first one, and like that's his favorite. And so I think depending on where you come in is kind of what you like. So we've all seen the Murakami bingo card with like there's cats and spaghetti and like talking about people's ears and so
ear fetish.
So once you've seen that 13 times or however many books he has, like it's kind of hard to be shocked by anything that he's gonna do. The only thing that he could really do that would surprise me is if he went just full genre, like if he just wrote a sci-fi book or a fantasy book, and like weirdly enough, the thing that would be the most surprising for him is to write like a book with a normal narrative, like point A to B to C. Like that would be wild.
I think so. Yeah, I always had the thought that he would be a great horror author because he has the ability to freak people out. I think, especially just a short example in Sputnik Sweetheart, the part where Mio talks about how Sumire passed out at night and looked at her with starry eyes. I was like, what's happening?
Yeah, or like even in I think it's Kafka on the Shore, right, where he's sleeping in the library and there's like the woman that kind of appears to him in the middle of the night. Like that's creepy. Certainly in Wind Up Bird Chronicle, where he's talking about all the stuff that happens in Manchuria with like the man being flayed alive. Like that's horrifying, you know?
With Boris, the man butcher.
Yeah, and you know, I think what excites me about him more so than any new book coming out is people adapting his books. I think we've been lucky in the past like 5-6 years that there's been several really good adaptations of his work. Like Drive My Car I thought was really excellent. I thought Burning was even better. Like that's definitely my favorite of the two. And then there's more coming down the pipeline too. I can't remember the names of them, but there's some more coming. And I think it's cool watching people take what is kind of hard to adapt, especially if it's a novel, right?
Yeah.
Like I think these successful film adaptations have been mostly based on short stories. So if anyone were to ever try to tackle one of these big books, that would be really exciting to me, whether it turns out good or bad, honestly. I just want to see someone try.
Yeah. At least because he has such a visual writing style. And I would really love to see how any director or photographer would put this into motion, right? And of course, you can't adapt everything. That's not possible. And some books should never be made into a movie. But I would love to see stuff like Kafka on the Shore or 1Q84 or something. It's
and
it's a good source material.
Yeah, and we're living in the age of like, we call it like prestige television, like shows that are almost just really long movies, and it's kind of the perfect time to do something like that because I think if you tried to turn 1Q84 into a 2-hour movie, it'd be impossible. But if you can give someone 10 episodes to do it, and on HBO or something, like I think that would work out really well. I think the biggest challenge would be structure, right? Because his books tend to go on a lot of tangents, and so how do you make that compelling without it just not making any sense, at least visually? So but anyway, getting back to the new book. So when you read it the first time around, did you read it in English or in German?
In German, because it was released in January already on his birthday.
Okay,
yeah, and it was actually no, sorry. So I never read any English work of him so far, but I want to because I want to see the difference.
Yeah.
But this one has been translated in Lightspeed by the German translator. And she's called Ursula Gräfe. So that's just a trivia for those who don't know about the German translations. Before she started translating his works, they have been translated from English to German. So they haven't been translated from Japanese directly. And they just started this 10 or 15 years ago. And since then, the books are recognized better than before.
Interesting.
And that's really interesting. It even caused an outrage in German television, just because there's a TV show which is called The Literary Quartet. So it's always 4 hosts sitting in around and talking about new book releases. And it's being released on public TV. And south of the border, west of the sun was the reason that there was an outburst in TV. It was a scandal. They were yelling at each other, and it caused one of the female hosts to leave the show after 10 or 12 years.
Really? That's wild.
Yeah. The thing is, South of the Border, West of the Sun has been translated from English to German, and she was criticizing the weak language, and she said it feels like literary fast food.
Okay.
And the other host, which is a very well-received, well-known author in Germany, he has passed some years ago, but very famous guy. He's the face of literature in Germany. And he was like, no, I love the book. It's not fast food. It's taught from the perspective of a young guy. And that's the reason why the language is a little bit weak. And she was like, no, it's over-sexualized. It's written poorly. And this is fast food. This is not written well. And they were screaming and yelling at each other. And 1 week later, she announced, I'm leaving the show.
Wow.
Yeah. And then they have re-released South of the Border with the new translator, which is Ursula Grefe. And she's a Japanologist and so on.
Yeah.
And then the book has been re-released, and it has been received much better than before. So that's really interesting. That's the same for the Weiner Bird Chronicle. They translated the English version into German, which is around 630 pages or something. Mm-hmm. And now they have re-released it in 2020. It's now over 1,000 pages long.
Wow.
And the reviews are getting higher each time.
That's cool.
You can really see the difference. And this time she translated it in light speed again. I couldn't find any mistake or something. So everything was perfect. Yeah. And that's because you asked me, I had to tell this right now. So yeah, it has a very beautiful language again. Yeah.
Very cool. And I'm so jealous of the covers that you guys get, because
that's
like I've noticed like the German editions they're kind of minimalistic, but like very pretty, And then for the US version, we have this thing.
Yeah.
just it's I don't know what to think of this, because I understand that like someone worked hard on this, so I don't want to blast it from that perspective, right? But I think the thing that frustrates me with these English covers, or American English covers, are there's no through line from book to book. Like they're all completely different. And I think that the translations in other countries, there seems to be more of a theme across them. Like I know the like English, like UK paperbacks of a lot of his books are in this like red, black, and white style where they're all kind of matching. And we had some version of that. I can't think of his name, but when they redid the paperbacks like some years ago, they were all kind of thematically similar. Like, let's see.
You mean the chip kit covers, or?
Yeah. So you've got the paperbacks here that kind of look like this.
Yeah.
And these are from like the 90s and the early 2000s. So whenever I see one of these, I try and pick it up because I really like the way these look. But then you have these ones, which kind of came about maybe like 10 years ago, and they kind of look like that. And so they've all got like this typeface and all of that. And I don't know. Those ones don't really do it for me so much. So you can see I've got like, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I told you this. I went to Scotland earlier this year, and I came back with all of these.
Beautiful.
Because they have these like really beautiful hardcovers in the UK now. And so my suitcase was full of books and chocolate on the way home.
That's the only right thing to do. So was it your first time in Europe? Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, I had never been.
Okay.
And now that I've been once, I kind of want to go back like permanently, honestly.
We're waiting for you. You're welcome.
Yeah. I don't want to get into this on the conversation, but things in the United States are a little weird right now.
Yeah, we were talking about it. Yeah.
So, who knows where we'll end up. We're moving states next year, which will be interesting. But getting back to the translation part of it, that's really interesting for two reasons. One, there's no show in the US that's people talking about books on TV.
Really? Okay.
It just doesn't exist. Like the most you'll get is like we have this CBS is one of our broadcasting stations here that's been around for forever. And they have, I think it's called CBS Sunday Mornings. And oftentimes they'll profile authors. And then we also have like NPR. Do you know what NPR is?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like National Public Radio. They often have authors on, but that's all audio. And then there is like PBS, like the public broadcasting service, and you'll get some literary stuff on there. But the concept of like a round table of people just talking about books is just not a thing. Yeah, I wish it was. I think people just don't read as much as they used to over here, which is a bummer. And then secondly, with the translation part of it, I know that there's, I think, been 2 or 3 different translators for his work in English. There's Jay Rubin, who's done quite a lot of them. And then there's this guy named Ted Goosen, I think, who I know less about. I do know that Hardboiled Wonderland is actually getting a new translation, which I'm really interested in. They're re-releasing it in English, and they've actually changed the title, so it's no longer, they've switched it, right? So instead of Hardboiled Wonderland and the End of the World, it's The End of the World and Hardboiled Wonderland. So definitely going to pick that up. I'm excited for that. But I do always wonder when I'm reading his books, like, how accurate is this to the Japanese? It would take me quite a while to learn Japanese, so I don't think I'll ever find out. But that's cool that the German editions are now being just direct from Japanese. I'm sure the quality's better.
Yeah, it is because you I mean, the English versions are certainly not bad, but you need to adopt things. You can't just translate it 100%. You need to change something, and then if you change it again into another language, just the essence maybe gets lost, right? And I don't have a comparison, but
what I'd really like to see, you were talking about Wind Up Bird Chronicle and how it became longer, right? I know for the English translation there's at least like 3 whole chapters from the Japanese that just isn't included at all. I still love the book, so I'm sure I'd love the new translation too. But maybe if it hits like, is it already at its 30th anniversary? Maybe that's like next year. Did it come out in 1995?
Yeah. That's 30 years.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe they have something coming down the pipeline. But I'd love to see that.
Yeah, they did in Japan already. There's a new edition in Japan with a new cover.
Oh, cool.
And they're actually showing the town and some unicorns. It looks quite cool.
Nice. Yeah, I know that the retranslation for Hardboiled Wonderland, it's basically just this again. Except for it's got kind of like a border around it, I think.
So. Really cool.
Yeah.
So, do you think we can spoil the book a bit?
Sure. So, for sure.
Let's. Anyone who doesn't want to know anything, stop the video now or stop the podcast episode now. If not, we warned you. We're diving straight into the book. So, we're starting the story with our nameless protagonist, who is talking to the girl. He fell in love with a girl, and the girl one day reveals to him that it's not her true self he's talking to. So instead, he's talking to her shadow only. And she says that her true self is located in a walled city. And if he wants to enter this city, he has to lose his shadow and to start a new job in the city. And in the end, they will meet again. So that's what he's doing. He enters the city, he gets a job as a dream reader, and everything within the city is uncertain, just as the title. It's the city and it's uncertain worlds. So we don't have any times. We have a clock tower, and there are no clock hands, and everything there is quite timeless and uncertain. No names, I think. There were no names. And the library he's working at, or the woman is working at, is empty. There are no books. And instead, they have dreams there and unicorns. And that's how the story starts. And I know many people will say, okay, this is just basically Hardboiled Wonderland at the end of the world, but with some slight differences. And what I wanted to ask you is, if you need to compare all these portions in the city, do you think it's better in Hardboiled Wonderland, or is it better in this book?
So it's been quite a while since I've read Hardboiled Wonderland. I think I reread it like 5 or 6 years ago. I felt at least that the kind of specifics of the town were a little bit more explored in this book than in Hardboiled Wonderland. This is a longer book too than Hardboiled Wonderland. I think so. It's like it's simultaneously better in this book in terms of what you get from the town, but still underexplored. Like, I think that is maybe one of the knocks on the story for me, is that I kind of wish we got even more from it. I kind of wish we got more interaction with the other people that lived in the town, because it's pretty much just the unnamed protagonist and the girl. And the other thing about it too is she doesn't even recognize him in the town. So he's kind of completely changed his life. He's lost his shadow to come join her with the hope that he can be with this woman that he loves, and she doesn't even know who he is. So yeah, it's such a fantastical place, because there's the unicorn beast running around, and you have the walls, and you have I forget exactly what his character is referred to as, but the guy who like severs the shadow from yourself.
The gatekeeper, right?
Yeah. And so, and I'm sure some of this is intentional, but you've got all that set up, and yet the town feels so empty and devoid of life. And I like that a lot. Like, it's very Murakami for it to be kind of dreamlike and mysterious, but at the same time, he could have done the whole book in that town and I would have been happy, you know? Yeah. What did you think about it?
Yes, same for me. It was, it's not better or worse than Hardboiled Wonderland. Both have their qualities. I think it's good to have a lot of space for interpretation. Not everything needs to be explained in a detailed way. But here it was like I really wanted to dive deeper into all the city stuff, because it is something you don't get everywhere. He describes this uncertainty quite well. And you want to know more about this uncertainty. It's like, okay, how does it look there? How does it feel there? How's the atmosphere there? And that's something I really liked. It grants a lot of space for interpretation, and you can easily spot the metaphor, because he wrote it during COVID and so on, where everyone was locked in. You weren't allowed to do anything. But you can adopt this metaphor on almost every era. It's not only something you can adopt to COVID. It's also, it's talking about personal freedom. It's talking about emotions, it's free speech. You can adopt it to almost everything. And that's something I really like. This multi-layered style.
Yeah, and I think it's super open for interpretation. It's a lot about kind of isolation too. You've got this guy who really his only meaningful connection is this woman, and then he goes to this place to be with her, and it's almost even more isolating than it was before. And I think there's a metaphor to be had too for like severing yourself from your shadow and what your shadow maybe like represents. And is your interior mind your real person, or is the person you express to the rest of the world the real you? There's a lot there, and like in typical Murakami fashion, he doesn't really give it to you on like a silver plate to say this is what I'm talking about. It's always kind of just a situation, and he's kind of here like, what do you think? I really appreciate that about his books.
Same for me. I was just about to say that I appreciate that he is not questioning our intelligence and our space of interpretation as other authors do. It's like, do what you want with it, with this information I'm giving you right now.
For sure. I think a question that brings up, though, especially if you're someone who doesn't like Murakami's book or his writing style, is because he's not saying something explicitly, right? Like he's not being so direct to say that like this is what the book's about, this is how I feel about things. I think some of his critics might argue that like, well, is he saying anything then? Like, are we just putting meaning onto this vacuous thing that is just kind of a little weird? I don't think that's the case. I think even though he doesn't lay it out for you explicitly, I think you can tell from his interviews and just how he's interacted with the public at large that he clearly has strong opinions about things. Yeah. So I don't think it's within him to write just emptiness, despite maybe what some of his critics think. But I do kind of in the same. I don't know how much you've gotten into like David Lynch, like the filmmaker.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, so he similarly will create these kind of nonsensical, dreamlike worlds, and when people ask him to explain what it's about, he just says no.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I understand that it can be kind of frustrating, and some people prefer other writing styles. I like books that are a little bit more explicit too. I read earlier this year this book called Babel by R.F. Kuang. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but that book is really explicit about the message that it's trying to get across, to the point where it almost reads like a textbook occasionally. Okay. So yeah, but I like the kind of vagueness of Murakami. It's I think one of his strengths.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about the quality of films, for example, you always say the golden rule is show, don't tell. And he kind of does this of course, you need to tell something in text, but he can do this in his books, I think. And that's the same. You named it with David Lynch, for example, Lost Highway. It's like online you'll find over thousands of interpretations, and every interpretation makes sense in its own way. And that's the thing. Yeah. So the difference in this book now is for those who are afraid of that they are rereading Heartbreak Wonderland. This time he escapes the city, and then we have a switch in the story itself. So he turns to I don't remember if they named the city right now. Was it Tokyo, or did he he moved to a rural town, I think. Quite rural.
I think it's, well, I think he grows up in the city as a kid, and then I think in typical Murakami fashion, he like goes off elsewhere, right? He kind of goes on his pilgrimage. But he does eventually end up in a very small town. Yeah.
And I like this part a lot, because that was, again, the typical Murakami. You know, he starts working. At first, he meets with all the people over there, and we have this yellow submarine kid. We have Mr. Koyasu, who is a very special character. And then we have the lady working in her own cafe that serves him blueberry muffins. And that's typical Murakami. He starts working in the library, and there all these interesting conversations start. So he's meeting the owner, who is Mr. Koyasu, an old Japanese man wearing kilts, like a Scottish guy. And that they start talking about spirits, about death, life, and so on. And I really like these portions. I don't know how they appeal to you.
Me too. Yeah, I think that's the part that reminds me the most of Kafka on the Shore, because obviously in that book, you've got the kid who ends up at the library, and he meets some new folks who become important in his life. And you've got the same thing here. Like, he kind of removes himself from his old life and starts something new. I really like the owner of the library, and I think probably he's the most well fleshed out character in the book. I think, like, you get the most backstory on him. I feel like he has the most personality. Like, he's clearly very quirky and has an interesting fashion sense, and the way he interacts with the people in the town is very particular. And then again, spoilers if you've gotten this far, you know, keep skipping if you want, I guess. But he turns out to be essentially a ghost, basically. And he's been having this conversation with a dead man who is kind of, I don't know, it's almost like as if there was a prophecy or something that he would come along and take over the library. But I think all of those scenes where they have the conversation, it's not a basement, is it? It's just kind of further into the building of the library where they're sitting by the fire and talking about life. I really liked those passages, probably even more so than I liked all the stuff in the town from the beginning of the book.
Yeah, same for me. That was really the part that finally got me hooked, and it was like I think it is quite most of the middle section, and that was the point where I couldn't put the book aside.
Yeah,
because I really loved this conversation. They reminded me a lot of Oshima and Kafka. It almost felt like this is an older version of Oshima, but with a lot of more wisdom. And
for sure.
And at the point where it turned out that he is a ghost was like, okay, now the book is getting very philosophical.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I love it when Murakami gets out there like that. Yeah. Some of his other books that are a little bit more grounded, I still like. There's very few of them if you think about it. Like, I think A Colorless Sakura fits into that mold. Norwegian Wood for most of it fits there, but I'm definitely more in it for the kind of wacky supernatural kind of stuff. I will say I think that and I'm not someone who gets too hung up on how Murakami writes women. I think that sometimes he does a good job and other times there's, something to be desired, right? And I think this is a case where it's a little underbaked, I think. This woman that he meets in the town that runs the cafe, in typical Murakami fashion, has some sort of like sexual hang up, you know what I mean? Where there's some complication about her relationship to other people. And I think in some ways that's giving her depth, right? And giving her some more defined character. But I do think it mostly just kind of serves the unnamed protagonist and like his journey for the most part. Because, he went to the town for this other woman and it really just never gets back to her. He's sort of left with this hole in his life. And I think if you're thinking about it more in like real world terms, it's like if you had a girlfriend in high school and just never got over her. If that was the one and now you just can't stop thinking about her for the rest of your life. And so he meets this woman and kind of starts to fill that hole again. And I don't know, I kind of liked it, but I wish it was a little bit more baked, I guess. Like I wish but and then what I'm really curious to hear about from you is your feelings about the kid, with the Yellow Submarine kid, because he's very interesting as a character.
He is, and I like the parts with him, but that's what you just said a few moments ago. That's also some sort of weakness of the book, that a lot of storylines just are randomly caught off.
Yeah.
And that's the same with the kid, because it started very interesting and it ended up quite random. I'm not sure. And that's kind of destroyed the thing for me. The book is not getting bad, but it's a weakness of the book. And I'm not sure. It felt, again, it was a little bit like it felt like a little bit like the parts from Kafka on the Shore with Nakata, who just changed after the incident, and we got a similar theme here.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that, but it's so condensed because this kid doesn't show up until the back half of the book, and he's almost more of like a plot device than he is a character. Because at least in Kafka on the Shore with Nakata, you get to spend pretty much the whole book with him, or half of it, right? Because the chapters alternate. With this kid, he essentially just sort of turns into the unnamed protagonist's way back into the town. And how do I put it? I think the way Murakami writes him is he doesn't explicitly state this, but the character seems like autistic to me, if that makes sense. He has some kind of like autism characteristics where he wears the same thing every day, and he's a little like socially kind of hard for him to relate to people, and he's quirky in that way. And I think having that representation in a book is oftentimes great because those characters exist in the world and they should exist in literature too. But at the same time, for him to kind of just be like, well, this autistic kid is a magical key back into the unicorn land, like it's a little questionable, I think.
Same. When I think it's the thing is, the story needs to take profit of its characters, and it felt so random.
Yeah, it
was like, for example, just Ushikawa, for example, in 1Q84, he has very special characteristics. Like he's described as being ugly, he's been described as being a pest to Tengo, but that's the reason he's described as he is because you as a reader should underestimate his danger. And in the end, it will be, the impact will be much heavier than before, because if he would have been described as a horrible, like a dangerous man from the very beginning, the threatening would have been obvious, but this time it hits harder.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the characterization of this boy really gives any profit to the story.
Yeah.
It's somehow meaningless. I'm not sure.
It's a little bit of again, it just kind of seems like a plot device to me. And for most of the book, right, like the main character's relationship to this town and with the walls around it is entirely to do with the girl he meets when he's a kid. And in some ways, I think it's interesting that someone else in the world, right, like this kid that he meets, also has a connection to that world. But it's completely different, and it's kind of like I didn't feel like it gave enough like closure to his time with that world. And frankly, like I think I finished the book a couple months ago, and I'm having a hard time remembering exactly how it wraps up. Like I understand that like you're with the main character in the small town for a while with the library and talking to the ghost, and then eventually he finds his way back into the world. But I don't know, it seemed a little hasty to me. Like it kind of just wrapped up a little too quickly. And I guess if anyone else had written this book, I think they might have spent a little bit more time on like the world building of like where this world comes from and why people are connected to it, why some people are versus others that have no idea about it. And that's a little bit more of a strength on like Hardboiled side, right? Because I feel like the sort of mechanics of like why that world exists in that book are a little more clearly stated, because the guy is what a Calcutech, is that what they call him?
Calcutech,
where he does like mathematical equations in his head really fast and all that. So frankly, I think, and I don't know if this exists, like, you know how some people write fan fiction, or like Harry Potter or whatever else. This world seems ripe for like a fan fiction exploration of the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally,
like,
totally.
Yeah, like I don't think Murakami will ever do the work of exploring it more thoroughly, but someone could, you know?
Yeah. It you know, the thing is, the other stories always had some sort of peak or like a finale. Kafka on the Shore, you had the entrance stone. You had in 1Q84, you had how Aomame and Tengo are meeting again. In Hardboiled Wonderland, which has a very beautiful ending, very melancholic, bittersweet.
Yeah.
And this time it's just like it's like the river is guiding into the ocean. and it's forgotten for always, right?
Yeah.
And that's a pity, because the book take its time at the very beginning. I feel like it's until let's say the what, I forgot the word right now. 3 out of 4. Sorry, let me.
3/4.
3/4, exactly. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah. So 3/4 are very written. They are written very, very carefully with a lot of thoughts. And the last quarter is just like, okay, the pandemic has ended. I can walk out again, and I can end the book right now, and let's just finish it.
Yeah. Because the first section of the book is pretty early in the guy's life, and he's splitting it between like describing his relationship with the girl and then being in the town, and then eventually those worlds connect. And then the second section of the book is all him in that other small town with the library. And you're right, it's like it feels like if that's the middle section of the book, then the ending of the book should have been longer, and you should have gotten a little bit more time back in the town with these new circumstances, and you just don't get it. But with that said, it's funny that we have these criticisms, and yet we're both still like, yeah, I really like the book.
Yeah, that's the thing, because it has the essence again, it's the essence. Yeah. And I'm not, maybe it's because we are such huge fans, or because we just like to picture all these surroundings from the book. And it is a cozy read. It's really cozy. I read it in winter. You read it in summer, I guess, but you still had the same feeling as me. And that's a big strength of his writing style. He knows how to suck you in.
Yes. Yeah, and I think also, it was kind of a thrill reading it because I got an advanced copy of it. Like I received a copy well before it came out, because it just came out here like maybe 2 weeks ago, I think. And I read it, I think, in August and September. So that that was part of it. I had never been given like a review copy before, and I thought that was really cool. But I think I'd enjoy it if I read it again. I really want to revisit Killing Commendatore. I haven't made the time for it. But I remember at the time when that came out, I liked it, but to me it sort of felt like Wind Up Bird Chronicle again in a way. But looking back on it, I do appreciate the ending of that book more than I appreciate this one. Like, I feel like the ending of Killing Commendatore really gets strange, and he's talking a lot about like physical metaphors, and like in retrospect, I think I have a greater appreciation for that, but completely different mood. Like, this book is it's pulling from other things, but I think looking at this book in the context of where he is in his career makes it kind of singular in that way. Overall, really, really liked it, even though there's some things to definitely criticize.
Do you have any more weaknesses? Did you find any more weaknesses in the book, or?
Let me think. I think that's about it. Honestly, I think I gave it like a 4 out of 5 when I finished it. My issues were really mostly just with the ending. I thought everything else was pretty well done, and even with like the characters, right, with like the woman who owns the cafe and the yellow submarine kid, like it's something where if you think hard enough you can criticize about it, but in the flow of the book, I think it makes sense. And I think even if there's some shortcomings there, the strength of those conversations he's having with the ghost who runs the library are so strong. Like, I think those sections of the book harken back to me for like is his name like Lieutenant Miyama talking about all this, like him, or like other parts in Murakami's career. Like, I think that section is really strong. So what about you? Are there any other areas you kind of wish were a little better?
The ending is the weakest part for me, actually. Just as you, and also the part with the yellow submarine boy. The thing, I really loved the element itself, but the way it has been put into the book kind of disappointed me. I felt it was a pity to use this as a plot device instead of using it for more. right? And
Yeah.
I think he could have shortened the parts with the cafe, with the muffin lady, and put a little bit more importance on the boy, right? Because
he is kind of splitting his time up a little, and it gets a little thin for those two.
Yeah, exactly. But in the end, it was really, really, it was like all the pressure, the inner pressure you had as a fan, if the book is good or not, just fell off. And that's, that was a nice reward, a huge appreciation. So I really loved it. I had a very good time again, like I had with other books. Of course, it's not a masterpiece like the other ones, but it is a very, very good read that you can return to every time. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. And I'm sure I'll get to this one again. I think once it comes out in paperback, I'll probably get to it, because sometimes the paperback versions are nicer looking too. Like the paperback of Killing Commendatore is actually really nice. I think it's in the other room. But I guess my question for you is, now that it's here, right, what do you want to see next from him? Because typically he'll put out a novel and then there'll be maybe a short story collection or two, like in between the newest one and whatever he's doing next. I know in the US, he often publishes like essays and short stories in the New Yorker, which is like a magazine we have here. So,
like
is like, I imagine he's nearing the end of his career, whether it's 10 years or 20 years from now. Is there any sort of like uncharted territory that you want to see him explore?
I don't want any short story collection, to be honest, because I think we have enough short stories, and these are stories you can always read again and again. If he releases a novel, it shall be something that maybe, if he has the ability to do, because if not, he shall just leave it. But if he has the ability to get back to this creativity he had in the 90s, where he just let all the characters do all the stuff they're doing and let just crazy things happen. And this with a good ending, that would be something I would love to read again. So just a weird world with weird conversations, with weird characters, but mixed with a lot of thoughts about his life. Maybe on a more meta level, where he reflects all the things he did in his own life.
Yeah.
This would be something I really would love to read.
I would too. I love all the weirdness that he gets into, whether it's 1Q84 or, Kafka has a lot of weird stuff in it. And that book starts out so strong too. Like the scene where Nakata is like a kid and there's like some sort of alien or whatever presence in the sky, and all those kids just fall over. And, I would love for him to do something like that again. And, I know I said earlier that I appreciate him leaving his work open to interpretation. But with that said, I do wish he would do more widely available like interviews.
You would love you would like him to open up a bit more, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be him saying this is what this means and this is what that means, but I just want to hear more from the guy. There's certainly a lot of autobiographical text to read, especially depending on the region you're in. Like, we have Absolutely on Music and what I talk about when I talk about running, Novelist as a Vocation. But I know elsewhere there's been like a travel blog that he kind of has published. And if we got another one of those kind of books, that'd be great. But I just want to hear him, like, even if it's just once, like if he goes even on a podcast or whatever, just like an hour-long conversation with him.
I would love to. I would love to listen. Yeah,
that would be so cool. And I'm sure you have run into this as a video editor, but trying to find footage of him speaking is next to impossible. There's like 3 clips that you can pull from.
It's rare. It's really, really rare. Yeah. And he has this radio show, but it's in Japanese sometimes. From time to time, you have some interviews, especially about the book. But that's just like they're feeding us with some portions, and we want to have more.
Yeah,
I could listen to him for a very long time, and I don't know if you have read his T-shirt book.
No, that one. No, I don't have that one. It was kind of, I don't know. It seemed not essential to me. To be honest,
it is not necessary, but it's like listening to an uncle who tells you some stories, because he has cool background stories, and that's, again, they are feeding us, or he's feeding us with a little bit, and you want more, but you don't get it. So yeah, that's a good point he said. So if we could get more of his insight, or even if he just tells us how he views the world, or if he has any message for the younger generation, that would be great. Yeah,
for sure. And there is one good conversation with him that I haven't read the whole thing of, but it's a conversation with Mieko Kawakami. Do you know who that is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
I know he did a big long conversation with her, and so that's something, right? But I just want kind of more of that. I have one of her books that I've been reading meaning to read for forever. I think it's called Breasts and Eggs.
Breasts and Eggs.
Yeah, and I'll get to it eventually. Yeah. I know as far as your stuff goes, right? Are you working on the Wild Sheep Chase documentary? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, currently Wild Sheep Chase, and that's, it's some sort of short documentary with some cinematic scenes, but I guess it will be the last one for now, and then I will return to more like review stuff and talking a little bit more, and do some more vlogs just to talk about me reading his books, because I'm not sure if I'm getting the essence of the books. I try, I tried with the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, but in the end, it's not the way I want to express myself permanently. I think it could be a little bit more better, just like we're doing right now, just to sit in front of the camera and talk.
Sure, yeah.
And for you?
So I right now, like I said earlier, I'm reading The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, and he's got so many books, and I like his books. I've read, this is my 4th so far. I read his Mistborn series, and I really enjoyed that. And the reason I'm reading this one is because he's my girlfriend's favorite author, and so I wanted to give it a chance. And I'm really enjoying it, but it's quite a commitment, because this is like a 1,300 page, fantasy epic. So I'm going to finish that. I'm also in the middle of the Dandelion Dynasty, which is written by Ken Liu, who I'm a big fan of. He has a couple of short story collections that are really excellent, and I would recommend to anyone. As far as Murakami goes, I haven't started work on it because it's going to take quite a long time. But what I'm going to do is probably my longest video so far, and I'm going to do a complete guide to all of his film adaptations. Even dating back to the ones from the 80s that are really hard to get a hold of. I have a friend who's kind of like a movie buff and a film collector, and he's always just kind of looking for side projects, and so he was incredibly generous and went and found all of them. So I couldn't name them all off the top of my head, but I know there's an adaptation of Hear the Wind Sing. I think that was one of the first ones. So
Attack on the Bakery, and also a girl, she's 100%. You can, I watched them. I found them in some sort of in a Wayback Machine.
Oh, and, cool! Yeah.
But I lost the links, I guess. But
so I've got copies of them, and I think they're subtitled, which is great. So I think I'm gonna do a kind of chronological review of all of them at some point.
Looking forward. That's cool.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I gotta watch all of them, and I think I've seen 3 so far. I've seen Drive My Car, Burning, and then the Norwegian Wood adaptation from 15 years ago. I don't think that one's very good, to be honest.
No, it's too heavy, I think. It's a slow burn and not well told. The book is much better.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what type of music you're into, but weirdly, that film, the score is by Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead.
Yeah.
Which is so random. I don't know.
That's really random.
Yes, maybe he's a fan. I don't know, but
possible.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I've got coming up next, and then to keep an eye on the channel for all the other stuff. It's been really fun doing like skits and kind of funny stuff. I've been really
they were quite cool. Also, especially the one like every time Haruki Murakami releases a new book.
Yeah, that was fun to make.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. While we talk about films, just this week I watched Tony Takitani.
Oh, how was that?
Beautiful film. It's breaking the fourth wall in some parts.
Oh, okay.
You will notice when you watch it that at the very beginning there's quite a random scene because Tony Takitani is played by Issei. What's his name? He's a famous comedian in Japan.
Oh, okay.
Just a second.
Yeah.
Tony Takitani. Issei Ogata, and he's a little bit older, and that matches to Tony Takitani in his adult years, but he's also playing him during his student years.
Oh, that's funny.
And that was before de-aging and stuff came out.
Yeah.
Please let me know if you noticed the same thing.
That's funny. Yeah, I'll check it out. It's always so funny to me when they have older actors play younger versions. Like, just get a young kid to do it. You know? Like there's other people.
Yeah, there's other people. Yeah.
And then I think I'm correct that the score for that one is Ryuichi Sakamoto, who's like a very prominent Japanese composer. I know he passed recently, which is really sad.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but I really appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you being here.
Yeah,
it was a really cool conversation, and we need to do more. I just had a quick thought because Leo has finished the Wonder Bird Chronicle, which is the next episode. So, and as it is one of your favorites and the first book, maybe that's something, if we can match all the time zones, that you can just hop on and talk with us.
Yeah, I'd come back for sure.
Definitely. Let's do it. I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about that book. So
beautiful. Okay, then I think we can go into the plannings for this one. So
yeah. Well, we can wrap it up here. If you want to stay on for a second, I just wanted to chat a little about other things.
Of course.
But
sure. Let's do it. So for everyone else, please follow Sean. I'll put the links in the description, and I also display it in the video. So please also follow him on Instagram because he has really funny shorts, and it's a joy to watch them. So again, thank you very much for being here, and hope to see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll see you next time.